was unparalleled. Someone whose asceticism, his zuhd was unparalleled. And so his death is going to be extraordinary. And I wanted to include it because it is very much so connected to what we should be aspiring to as we're hearing all of these stories of the Sahaba. Now, before I get into his, there's a narration that when Salman radiallahu ta'ala anhu was dying, Salman al-Farisi was dying, that he had musk in his room, good smells in his room, and he laid down and he said, tonight there are creatures that are going to be coming to me and they smell fragrances, but they don't eat food, meaning he was ready for the malaika, ready for the angels to come and to take his soul. And that's one of the signs of husn al-khitam. One of the signs of a good ending is that you kind of feel it at the end and you prepare yourself. Now, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz had a great fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just like his grandfather Umar ibn Khattab, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, despite everything amazing that he did, and despite all of the praise that he received for what he did, until the very last moment, he's worried about going to hellfire. He's worried about Jahannam, though no one would speak to them in that vein, in that spirit. So he calls a friend of his, who is a great scholar by the name of Al-Raja ibn Haywa. Al-Raja ibn Haywa, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, actually is Ghazawi. He's a scholar from Gaza in Palestine. Amazing scholar of Islam and a contemporary of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And Umar ibn Abdul Aziz gives him instructions. He says, listen, when I die, I want you to be the one to receive my body in the grave. And when I'm there, I want you to uncover my face. If you find that in the grave I'm already facing the Qibla, then thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and leave me there, for Allah has granted me al-Jannah. And if you find otherwise, then insist on the people to ask Allah to forgive me and have mercy on me. So it's something between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not something, a practice that, we go into the graves and if they're facing the Qibla, we say Alhamdulillah, though we would say Alhamdulillah regardless, but that we would assume otherwise in a different situation. So he gives that instruction to him. And then he calls for his wife and his children. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz had a very righteous wife, Fatima bint Abdul Malik, radiyallahu ta'ala anha, rahimahullah. Wonderful, righteous woman that he would praise often. And he embraces her and he bids her farewell with an ayah from the Quran, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compensates the patient without any limits. So gives her the glad tidings of what she would receive should she maintain patience in the case of his death. Then suddenly he looks up and his gaze was fixed on something. And he asks his family to leave. He says, "Ukhruju anni." He asks them to leave. So they leave, but they stay at the door. And they peek in and they can hear what Umar ibn Abdul Aziz is saying. And they said that a light entered into the room. And Umar says the following. He says, "Marhaban bihadihi al-wujuh." Welcome to these beautiful faces. "Allati laysat biwujuhi insin wala jan." These faces that don't belong to human beings or jinn. So he's looking at their faces and he is praising them. And then he recites, تِلْكَ الدَّارُ الْآخِرَةِ نَجْعَلُهَا لِلَّذِينَ لَا يُرِيدُونَ عُلُوًا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فَسَادًا وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That this is the home of the hereafter. We grant it to those who don't seek elevation or corruption in this earth, and victory belongs to the believers. And he kept on reciting that verse until they stopped hearing him recite it. Then his wife and his children walked in, and they found him facing towards the Qibla,